Cody, we all set? Yeah, I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting Wednesday, February 26, 2025. It is now 6:33. Determination of a quorum. Mr. Kenny. Mr. Smith is excused tonight. Mr. Reyes.
Yeah.
Mr. Burke is excused tonight. Mr. Price.
Here.
Mr. Studley. Secretary Anderson. Vice Chair Kalunian. Chairman Flynn is here. We have a quorum of 7 tonight. Evacuation plan, doors you came in, go out to the left, front of the right to the front of the building, left to the back. And if we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag,
United States of America, to the republic, and one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm going to take a few things out of order tonight. I'll need a motion to move executive session, which would be number 7. I'm going to do that after the minutes. And we're going to do the bond reduction for the Hopes right after that. So I'll entertain a motion to do that order, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to remove the executive session and
We're going to add the executive session after the minutes.
Yep,
We're going to move it up.
you're going to move it up to after the minutes,
Yes,
and you're going to move the bond reduction right after that.
right after executive session.
Yes.
Correct. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second by Mr. Reyes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Okay, next we got approval of minutes. 5/1, January 22nd, 2025. Have a motion, please.
Yeah, motion to approve the minutes.
I have a motion by Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second? I have a second by Mr. Kenny. Do I have any comments on those? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, make a motion to go into executive session. Okay, I'll read it. No problem.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, executive, you want to read it?
I will. I'll make a motion that that the Planning Commission go into executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-46-5A2 for sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, or work sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation or potential litigation.
Okay, I have a motion on executive session. I have a second by Mr. Kenny. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, I'll do a roll call. Mr. Kenny. Mr. Reyes. Mr. Price.
Aye.
Mr. Studley. Mr. Anderson. Mr. Kalunian.
Aye.
Chairman Flynn also says aye. All right, we'll be going into short executive session. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to reconvene this meeting. Coming out of executive session, no votes. I'm sorry. Reconvene in open session. There were no votes taken in the executive session, and I would also include that we seal the minutes from the executive session.
I have a motion, I have a second by Mr. Reyes. I'll do a roll call. Mr. Kenny? Mr. Reyes? Mr. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Studley?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Colunian?
Aye.
Chairman Flynn also says aye. Okay, we are out of executive session. Okay, now we are going to go to 8.1 bond reduction. The Oaks on Hope Furnace, owner D2 Homes LLC, applicant Hope Furnace Land Company LLC, bond reduction for approved and recorded phases of 32 lot cluster subdivision with street creation, AP 97, Lot 6, AP 89, Lot 3, Zone RR2, Hope Furnace Road. Is there anybody here representing the applicant?
And Mr. Chairman, before we begin, the record should reflect that I believe you were submitted a letter from Attorney Rocher by the Planning Department, and you had submitted a Planning Board recommendation.
Yes. Yes, we've received both. Name and address, please.
Sorry, thanks, Steve. Office is at 321 South Main Street in Providence. We submitted actually two letters, one post your staff report at the last meeting, and then one dated February 19th, 2025. We gave some pretty significant background on this request for bond reductions. To be clear, these were October requests for bond reductions. The first on phase 1 to reduce to the maintenance phase of 10%. The other two to reduce the bonds in phases 2 and 3, which are not yet complete. The second two were minor bond reductions. The first one was based on the infrastructure being complete, some of which has been complete for a couple years. And the rest of the saga speaks for itself in my letter. I won't belabor that. I can certainly answer any questions. But the issue here is there's a significant amount of money being held up for not so significant reasons at this point. There are the reasons placed in the staff report as to holding the bonds relate to the stormwater in phase 1. That doesn't account for the releases in phases 2 and 3. We have gotten our contractor out there, and any issues with respect to phase 1, he's estimated. Because of the delay in months of getting information with what the potential issues were, we now have, we're coming out of, fingers crossed, snow cover. And our engineer's been out there, but is going to go back. But that doesn't, none of this equates to holding this bond hostage at $893,000. So that's the long and short of it.
Thank you. We are taking public comment on this. Is there anybody in the room that would like to say anything on this bond reduction? Cody, anybody raise their hand on Zoom? Nothing. Okay. So we have no public comment on this. You're all set with your presentation?
Depends if there's questions.
I don't have any questions. Anybody else have any questions?
I just incorporate everything that's in
Okay.
what we submitted.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've had the packet. I think everybody's read the applicant packet. We have a recommendation from our staff, and I'd entertain a motion.
Does staff have, does staff have anything to add? Nope, not at this time.
Nothing to
Staff
add.
report?
We stand by the staff report.
Mr. Chairman, after reading the staff report and the correspondence from Attorney Rocha, I think the kind of at an impasse. There's arguments on both sides for this, whether we should reduce or, release or hold. Out of an abundance of caution, I think this almost seems like it's turning into a legal matter. I'm going to make a motion that we deny the release of the bond.
Okay, I have a motion to deny the release. Do I have a second?
I'll second
I
it.
have a second by Mr. Reyes. I'm going to do a roll call on this. Mr. Kenny?
Aye.
Mr. Reyes?
Aye.
Mr. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Studley?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Clunian?
Aye.
Mr. Flynn says aye. We have 7 to not release the bond. Well, the motion is denied. The motion is to deny the bond release. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
are we moving up 9.1?
I was going to go right into capital improvements. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the capital improvements as read. They meet the comp plan, and I was going to actually do the ordinances also. Okay, so we're going to go back to recommendation to council for discussion, vote, or other action, FY 2026 to 2030 capital improvements program. Does anybody here like to come up and speak on those? All right, seeing none. Mr. Angel.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Stephen Angel, Town Solicitor, Coventry. I rise to speak on the ordinances that are before you tonight for comment. You have some 18 ordinances before you, which are changes, significant changes to your.
We're on the capital
Oh,
improvement.
I beg your pardon. I thought you were calling for.
Oh, we're gonna do a motion on capital improvements, so stay right there.
I'll stay right here.
I'll entertain a motion as written for capital improvement. I have a motion by Mr. Kenny. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Price. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries on the capital improvements.
You've made Mr. Perillo's night.
He's always smiling anyways. Okay, go ahead, Steve. We're on the, let me just read the ordinances in. So 6.2, we're going to discuss, vote, or other action, proposed code amendments. And we have 18 total. Go ahead.
It's always a pleasure to be judged out of order by you, Mr. Chairman. So there are 18 ordinances before you, and you've seen some pretty heavy code amendments as a result of changes in state law that were implemented well over a year ago. Very ably, planning responded to that, and you saw a raft of legislation come before you at that time. There will be subsequent pieces of major code overhaul in your area. This is a continuation of that, okay? It's a lot, I know. I wanted to give you a sense of how we're working together to get this done. It's a bit different than the first time that we did it, because the first time we did it, we had to get something done and in place for, a January deadline, right? The wish list, if you will, that had come over relative to these sections of the code, we took the time to look at the various sections, not just the subsections that they were interested in, with an eye toward getting a few things right. So you're going to see, they look like knicky-knack changes, but they're really not. I guess what I can tell you in general is that everything that you see is something that I've signed off on. I know that Mr. McLean and Mr. Barato have other suggestions for you, perhaps minor to what's in front of you. These ordinances were introduced at the council level, advertised for the 4 days. They had their first introduction last night, and they'll be before the council at their next meeting on the 11th for a full hearing. And the council will eagerly await your recommendations and other changes, and will make the amendments, whatever they may be, that night, so that we'll move these things along pretty much in this fashion when you see the next round of these. Not here to answer your questions. I'll take any if you have them, however, but I know Doug will very ably present to you. You have 2 memorandums from him on this, very well written, I might add, and quite explanatory, but I do know that he has other changes to recommend. I am in favor of the changes, and I am in favor of the ordinances as written and have signed off on them, and will be recommending them to the council as amended.
Thank you. Just to be clear, 1 through 12 will be one motion, and 13 through 18 will be a second motion.
Yes, please. And then I do have a few questions that I think both David and Steve can help weigh in on. The first question is, we have put on the agenda ordinances that have not had their first reading yet. And so the question is, as long as they've been accepted by the solicitor, I want to ensure we're free to make our recommendation now, and those will end up in front of the town council on, I believe it's March 25th will be the second batch.
Yeah, unless we squeeze it in on a budget night, but yes. So the other 6, the second batch, as Doug referred to it, have also been posted, and they're just waiting for whatever their first reading will be. That did not occur the other night. My preference would be, with respect, is if you can give us your recommendation on all that are before you, we'll take them and we'll get them passed as soon as we're able. Thank you.
And then my next question, again, it'll be for Steve and David, just to confirm the remaining adjustments that we have to this code from the state that you received them into the state that I think we intend to discuss them at the council. They're very minor in nature. Some may even describe some of them as more like Scribner's errors. So I'll ask the solicitor, should we introduce those changes tonight and ask for a recommendation based on those changes, or allow those changes just to be made through the town council hearing process?
If they're not substantive changes to the code itself, and they're, Scribner's errors and things of that nature, minor cleanup, I think out of an abundance of caution, you can certainly point it out to the commission, but it's not something that they have to make a recommendation on. Those will not be changes that will require reposting and re-advertisement. Won't trigger that, because they're not a completely substantive change to the ordinance. So we can just amend on the floor of the council during the night of the public hearing.
Sounds good. So in about 1 minute, I'm going to give you guys a summary of a few of the changes that are going to be different from what you see to one of these ordinances, and then what we'll ultimately be seeking and providing to the council as guidance on recommended amendments. They're very minor, but I'll give you that information so you have it for the record. Before I do that, this commission is familiar with the content of all of these ordinances. This is something that this commission assisted with giving guidance on just last month. If you have questions on any of the ordinances, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that in general, you're familiar and you're comfortable, and we don't need to go over any of those ordinances in large scale format. So the very specific changes that we'll be seeking are to Article 6. I'm going to call it out by its specific ordinance number. This would be our ordinance number 2025-10, amending Article 6, zoning, district use, and dimensional regulations, particularly 600 schedule of zoning district regulations, table 6-1, and attachment 10A. I'm looking for my planning summary. I'll be able to go through it actually quickly, item by item. The first item that's going to change is that we're recommending that on the first page of that, accessory dwelling units, the way that we're recommending to handle that is accessory dwelling units should not actually have an entry in the use table. It's better to allow that to remain a condition where it can be sought, but there has to be a single-family home on the premises, regardless of the zone that it's in. So we think that it's better, and we've received guidance to remove accessory dwelling units from the use table. The other changes that we've made are relative to minor uses. Alex, do we have that planning summary that you've got? Where's this? I'm looking for the document that had the big planning notes. David, do you have that document that says planning document over there in big orange writing? It would have been one that I might have just handed to you just this evening. All right. You know what? Let's get the, you have the use table anywhere here? I'm just going to suggest off of memory. There was minor uses amounting to 7 changes to the use code. They were for instances in which planning staff had suggested that a change that was in the draft you see now, planning staff is suggesting that instead of making a change for uses such as sale of paint, repair of motor vehicle, government buildings, and private daycare, those were the uses that we're talking about. There were some instances in which we had suggested, the current draft suggests to allow the use to go from a not allowed to an allowed. The planning staff is suggesting not to make that change at this point. The initial intent of all of these code changes were to take changes of uses that were once a special use permit and to consider where those special use permits were turned off and turned into a not allowed, where those specific uses should be brought back. On some occasions, we looked at other uses that we felt we should consider allowing. What we've decided to do is move away from anything that was not previously a special use permit is not something we're looking to bring back in this first bite. The commission's aware of that issue in broad format, that at some point we may be looking to expand further uses, particularly in industrial districts. That's not what we're looking to accomplish with this. So the changes that we're making are really just to about 7 or 8 items to make it a more conservative ordinance. Instead of allowing a use to be going from a no to a yes, we're just leaving it as no for now, and we plan to revisit that as a second bite at the apple of this use table. So those are just the summary of that issue. I think the commission's generally aware of that, and we would consider these changes bringing the document into a more conservative format, reducing the number of changes that are being proposed. So that's something that we're seeking to do through the council hearing format. But I think we're looking for your recommendation on the documents as they exist. Unless the solicitors see otherwise, I don't think they need to amend their recommendation to account for the additional changes that are going to be made. But I'll defer to the solicitors.
For the record, I just want to make sure, the planner is talking about the substitution of 10 table to show those corrections that you referred to in the correspondence that you sent out.
That's correct.
So do you have that corrected use table in front of the board only? You have the corrected use table in front of the board?
No, we haven't submitted any different documents to the board other than what came out of the
What I
solicitor's
would,
packet.
what I would suggest then is have the board, have you do 1 or 2 things. One, have them adopt all the ordinances as presented,
Yep.
and then make a motion, a separate motion on, is this the use table? This is so-called 10A?
Yep.
Why don't you hold off 10A and make a motion? Let's get the block of documents out that are going to be passed as presented. And then you're going to have the 10A and the amended 10A. So the record will be clear that he's asking you to deal with 10A. 10A is the use table. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can we deal with the block of documents that are not being amended in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So I will ask for a motion from 1 through 12.
Yeah, but 1 through 12, did that, is that
It does include
block?
10. We'll leave 10 out.
Right. Leave 10 out, please. Because 10 is inclusive of 10A.
Okay. All right, before I ask for a motion on the ordinance, is there anybody in the room have any public comment on these? Seeing none. Cody, raise your hand on Zoom if you have any public comment on any of these ordinances. No. Okay, Yep, go ahead.
Doug, are there any other ones in the first block that need to be addressed?
No,
It's 10?
nope.
The only thing I would add, if the planner hasn't mentioned, I would ask that the board not only make a motion to do a positive recommendation, but to adopt the findings of the planner.
Right, it's incorporated,
report,
right.
and that'll be
Staff
presented to the
report.
council, and that covers you statutorily, as long as the board's satisfied with that.
12, excluding number 10. I'll need a motion, and then the finding of facts are individually in the staff report. If you can encompass the staff report in your motion, I'll entertain that motion now, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adopt ordinances 1 through 12, except for 10, and to adopt the planning findings of fact as well in my motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Kenny. Do I have a second?
And then through the chair, just one minor amendment to that. When we say except for attachment 10A, please.
Okay,
Okay, except, I'll amend my motion to say except for attachment 10A.
okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Price. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Recommendation carries. Okay, I'm going to shoot over to,
So it's, Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that 10A in front of you is the one as presented, posted by the council, not amended. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I would think the board should move a positive recommendation with the findings of the planner on that matter.
okay. Okay, I'll ask for a motion on 10A.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a favorable recommendation on ordinance, and I believe it's 2025-10, inclusive of the attachment 10A as amended tonight verbally by the planning director.
Well, I was going to have you move it as presented,
As
First.
presented first.
please.
All right, I'll move it as presented. And I would also like to still incorporate the,
Before you get to the amendments, the reason why I'm saying that is I want the council to get a positive recommendation what was sent to you from the solicitor. And then on a separate motion, I want you to adopt the planning board's
Okay,
and revised 10A.
Yep.
And so the solicitor will be able to do that in front of the council the way he sees fit.
okay.
Because he's not familiar with what we're doing here,
Although you left out 10 and 10.
not this specific. So I'm asking you to move 10A
Yep.
as presented by the council sitting on your desk.
we're going to do two motions on 10A.
Please.
So I got it. I'll revise my motion to move approval or a favorable recommendation on ordinance 2025-10, inclusive of the attachment 10A as presented for tonight's meeting. And again, I would like to incorporate and reference the planning director's report labeled Code Updates First Batch.
I have a motion of a second. Second by Mr. Reyes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll take another motion. Rick?
I would like to make a favorable recommendation of those amendments to attachment 10A that were presented tonight by the town planner, to have that forwarded to the town council
Consideration.
for consideration.
And through the solicitor, do you want me to specifically call out those uses for the record?
Did you not?
I gave a summary of it, and I've got the document in front of me. All right, so what we've got is in that document, the specific changes that planning staff is recommending is for accessory dwelling units as a standalone use to be removed from the use table. Next, we're recommending that the use of sale of paint, glass, floor covering, and wallpaper, there's a suggested change in the industrial one zone. We're recommending no suggested change there. Moving right ahead, motor vehicle, motorcycle, or trailer dealers and new and used, including repairs conducted only within buildings. There's a suggested change within the I-2 district. Planning staff is recommending no suggested change there. For tire, battery, and accessory dealers, no service, auto parts store, there's a suggested change in your packet in the industrial 2. Planning staff is recommending no suggested change at this time. For the use of antique shop, there's a suggested change in the business park zone. We're recommending no suggested change at this time. And two more, for government-owned buildings except for garage or utility, there's a suggested change in the industrial 2. We're recommending no suggested change. And for the last use, private daycare, kindergarten, elementary, or secondary school, junior college, or university, there's a suggested change in the industrial 1 and industrial 2. Planning staff is suggesting no change at this time for those specific uses. And that concludes the differences between what you have in front of you and what we would ask for a recommendation as a separate matter.
Okay, I have a motion and I have an explanation from staff. Do I hear a second? I have a second by Mr. Reyes. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to
Second block, Mr.
the
Chairman.
second block. Yes, I'll entertain a motion from ordinances as written, 13 to 18. Entertain a motion. I did them on all the ordinances, public comment.
And planning staff has no comments on this batch, all ready to go?
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a favorable recommendation on ordinances 2025-13 through 2025-18 and incorporate the planning department's memo finding of fact.
I have a motion by Mr. Kenny. Do I have a second?
Aye.
Second by Mr. Colonian. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes care of the ordinances. Okay, now we're gonna move on to new business. Nine point one. It's Coventry Center. Pre-application from Major Land Development Owners, Bernard L. Foley Living Trust, Lot 23, David T. and Christine Alton, Lot 24, applicant Star Resolute LLC, AP 7, lots 23 and 24, Zone I-1 Industrial, 666 Arnold Road and 2271 New London Turnpike. The applicant is seeking to construct a development containing either purely commercial uses, potentially including but not limited to restaurants, retail, grocers, gas stations, convenience stores, coffee shops, and/or service stations, or a mix of commercial uses with a multifamily residential component. As this is a pre-application review, information proposed only. No formal decisions will be made at this stage. The proposal will eventually require a formal master plan and a corresponding zone change to be decided by the Planning Commission and Town Council respectively. Thank you.
Evening, Mr. Chairman. As you know, my name is Kelly Morris Salvatore. I represent the applicant, Star Capital, and my offices are located at 1 Turk's Head Place in Providence, Rhode Island. So this is a pre-application meeting. We're calling the development Coventry Center. This is located at the corner of New London Turnpike and Arnold Road. The addresses of the properties are 2271 New London Turnpike and 666 Arnold Road, also designated as Assessor's Plat 7, lots 24 and 23. Lot 23 has 8.6 acres, Lot 24 has 8.4 acres for a total of 17 acres. The zoning is presently industrial. Star Capital and Tim Eden, who will speak to you shortly, is under agreement to purchase these properties with the owners. Tonight, I have with me, besides Tim, Josh Rosen, who is a professional engineer, and he's our site engineer, as well as Robert Clinton, another professional engineer, and he's a traffic engineer. The slides that you're seeing have been provided to us by our architects. And the first slide shows you kind of the amenities and the kind of character that we hope to provide to this site. We believe that the site is well-suited for commercial or mixed-use development. And again, we're here at a very high level, pre-application. You've been provided with two different plans, one showing purely commercial uses, the other showing commercial with a couple of residential buildings. We are working with a real estate broker to identify the interest in the property by prospective tenants and whether residential is supported here. We want to have flexibility with uses as we continue to work on the site design. The surrounding area, as you know, in fact, I think the next slide might show, no, doesn't show the there's another slide, it might be a different document that shows the area that I know Tim's going to want to talk a little bit about.
You looking for your site plans?
This one.
Oh, Cody, there's a,
Yep, so obviously, you know, you're familiar with this area. It's located adjacent to center of New England with a CVS kind of across the intersection as well as a Cumberland Farms. So in reviewing your existing zoning designations, there's no one zoning district that adequately addresses the mix of uses that would be appropriate here. So what we're proposing is a planned district, which I have outlined the proposed uses in my letter to you. We've also, proposed some dimensional and parking requirements. As you know, you will be reviewing that requested zone change with our master plan submission, and you will make a recommendation to the town council. With a zone change specific to this lot, we can address this property more specifically and what works for this development. Now, in preparing the conceptual plans, we were mindful of the opportunities for this site as well as the constraints. For example, we respect that there are residences across the street on New London Turnpike. So heights are proposed to be restricted to 35 feet along New London Turnpike. And wider buffers are proposed along the boundary of Assessor's Plat 16 Lot 1. So as you move away from the intersection, the next lot, that's where that buffer will be. I think we can show you on the site plan at some point. Similar to our discussion regarding Center of New England properties, we do understand that you will want to see an LMI component if we do provide affordable housing, and we would suggest that that affordable percentage be 18%, just like Center of New England. The conceptual plans for both full commercial and mixed use comport with the dimensional regulations we will be proposing for setbacks, buffers, impervious coverage, gross floor area, height, and parking. I got a copy of some of the comments that you probably received in emails. Obviously, this is very high level at this point. We don't even know if there will be a residential component. We will be working on that soon to bring you a master plan. But things like drainage, environmental issues, and traffic will certainly be addressed at both master plan and preliminary plan to the extent that that's required at those two reviews. So at this point, I'd like Tim Eden to get up and just add to what I've said. Mr. Eden?
Hi, for the record, Tim Eden with Star Capital. And thank you very much, Kelly, for the introduction. And what I want to do is give a brief overview of at a high level, and then we'll get into the site plan and show you the different options that we've come up with. So we thought the site was well suited for retail. There is a lot of residential program on this slide, about 1,500 units if you add everything up, properties at Center of New England and surrounding. So we felt like there was room for more retail to service the residents in Coventry to complement the anchors that we have there, Walmart, BJ's, and Home Depot. but there wasn't a lot of small shop space and restaurants, so we felt that that was a good land use for the property and what was called for there. We did look at leasing very closely. The retail market, it doesn't really support the anchor tenant that we would want for the whole site. It's a big site, 17 acres. It can accommodate about 125,000 square feet of single-story retail development. We really couldn't identify who that is because there are so many tenants already in the marketplace and there are enough grocers to go around. So that's where we came up with sort of a plan B, which was a residential option that you'll see. I think we want to maintain that flexibility because in our leasing effort, we would hope that we would be able to do commercial to support the community. And that might take the form of medical office, for example, or other commercial uses in addition to the residential that's already approved for the area. One of the big issues, of course, is traffic that we are addressing, and Bob's going to speak to that shortly. There is a lot of cars in this neighborhood, and we would point to Center of New England Boulevard that has been resurfaced, and the connection between the east and the west sections, that is forthcoming. It is under construction now, waiting for the weather to clear, and we're looking to complete that by June. So that's going to take a lot of pressure, we think, off of New London Turnpike and off of Arnold Road. So residents from the west part of the town can more easily get to the center of New England. But we think that's a significant factor in the traffic mitigation. We'd also point out that in the context of our site plan, we will be looking at drive aisles and widening where we need to and providing better turning motion around the intersection. So we do think that our project will maybe address some of the turning motions at this busy intersection. So Cody, if we could go to the other deck of slides, and we'll go through the site plan options here. So this is the first option we looked at, which is more of a traditional shopping center format with the retail pads on the front part of the site, and then the inline building in the back. It's about 60,000 square feet. Could be a lot of different uses there. And again, this was our plan A. As we got into it and meeting with tenants, we really couldn't identify who's going to be who kick that off. So if we go to the next slide there, Cody, we came up with a plan B, which is could be residential, could be hotel, and we would certainly will look at that closely. We'll note there's 3 hotels already at the center of New England, and they're not full during the week. Yes, there's probably more weekend traffic there, but it's difficult to see how new hotel construction would underwrite at this location. So these buildings, they could be commercial buildings as well. These are footprints that could swing either way. I think our plan here is to get the site work done, get the site to balance out, and get the retail, the upfront retail on the roadways under construction, and then we'll make a decision. Hopefully, this will be the end of the year by that time. And if we have additional leasing for the commercial, then then that'll be a better option for us. That'll present itself as we go through the calendar year. So that's where we are. We're here to answer the other questions that you may have about the plan and how we're approaching this important site.
I just have, at master plan, will we know what direction you will be going in at that stage?
I would say likely. That's 2
Yeah.
months, 2 months away.
Well, I have advised my client that, a master plan, you're kind of vested in what you're proposing if you get an approval. And if anything significantly changes, we would have to come back for a new master plan. So that we understand what the consequences are once we kind of commit to something, and that if he does want to change his mind, we would do an amended master plan. Okay.
Thank you.
Also add that these would be apartment buildings, mostly rental, and they might be for sale, but they're likely more to be rental properties. Well, there is a lot of rental property already in the pipeline. So we're concerned about that. And, this may be just one more building that is not ready. So one of the third option we have would be to hold on to it and delay that for a few years and let the other residential development take shape. We do anticipate launching the apartment project on Arnold Road at the end of in a few months, that time, we'll be submitting our preliminary plan. We hope to be under construction with that this time next year. So that's the timeline we're on. And so there are plenty of apartments in the pipeline, and, we need to be mindful of the market absorption.
Understood. Anybody else have any questions?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Real easy. So is there 3 options or 2 options? All residential or apartment, hybrid or commercial? Only commercial?
No, so 2 options. One is mixed use, so there will always be a commercial component. And the other one is pure commercial. So there's not a pure residential.
The mixed use. Is the numbers of apartments roughly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
So-
there's somewhere around 180 units on our plan that, the way it's drafted, if we about 120,000 square feet is our baseline for a surface park retail project. And, if we cut that back to 60, then that would free up, I think, 200 apartments.
Yeah, so I sent a letter to you that kind of describes what the zoning ordinance is going to look like. So we've carefully, we reduce the square footage for every residential unit. So there'll never be too much of anything, and we have to park it. We have to make sure that there's enough parking. So all of those other requirements are going to keep this project looking somewhat like this or the other plan.
Yeah, and I would say that the demand on the retail side that we're seeing so far is a lot of food and beverage and services. Medical office is something we're taking a very close look at. Urgent care center, the Aspen Dental, eye doctor. So if we can get a collection of medical-related uses, then, that would be a benefit, we think, to the community.
Anybody else?
So just to kind of clarify, it is just a concept plan. I forget how many apartment units you just referenced that you would have available, but that could be cut in half in favor of additional commercial space. And I know I just flipped through the staff report. We kind of had a busy agenda tonight. You got sewers over there, most likely,
The main sewer line on New London.
in sewer, and you're on a bus route, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it is prime. Again, considering, I don't know, what would the immediate abutters to the rear and, on the other side? I know it's across the street.
Let me address that. Cody, could you go back to the aerial photograph?
And while he's doing that, I know you said there was residential across the street. I'm familiar with that. That's zoned residential across the street as well? That's not okay.
So, Cody, if you could go to the corner there.
Maybe just zoom in at the
Site-
yellow.
Site to the, I guess it's the east.
Yeah, the big yellow spot. Yeah, right there.
Okay, if we could just, yeah.
Yeah, that's it, right there.
All right, that's it. That is an industrial property. It's leased.
Right.
And there is some unusable property and some wetland condition on that particular.
So your abutter is industrial in the back?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the abutter to the north is a senior housing project. And that, what is the status of that, Doug, do you know?
They received preliminary plan approval just within the last 6 months. And they do anticipate moving that project forward, although we haven't seen the final plan yet.
I'm familiar with that. Yeah, so the reason and again, I just want to call it because I did read some of the emails too. I mean, this property is zoned industrial. It's probably not a likely use, and it's probably not a sightly use for an intersection of this. So one of the two is probably a good fit, whether it's commercial, residential, or, any combination. So,
Just to add, because one of the emails talked about, they thought that it would be 90% impervious. Right in the ordinance, we're saying 65%. So, yeah, I just want to, so we are mindful of, what can go there, and we want to have green space, we want to have amenities, so.
So my only other comment or concern, and you heard me at the last meeting, is there's a lot of volume going on over there right now. When you, just to put it in perspective, when you get off 95 South to take New London Avenue to Arnold Road at 4:30 in the afternoon, it is bumper to bumper through there. There are people going into center New England, but the GPS now will send you straight down New London Avenue and through the neighborhoods to get over to Tyoke versus sitting in traffic on Arnold Road. And 95 northbound, which I raised before, that whole area over there, and I don't know how far along the bridge is, when the connection is going to be made, but it is very, very important, I think. Your traffic engineer, both projects, the residential developments that are not your responsibility, and the town. I think that corridor, in West Greenwich, by the way, because I think things are going to start changing on Hopkins Hill Road, need to look at the corridor between both exits on 95. I used to call them 6A and 7. I don't know what they are now. I think it's 19 and 20. As well as Hopkins Hill Road down to where the entrances are on Summer Arnold Road and through that corridor, just to make sure the upgrades are made, because it's just going to be a big bottleneck. And it's not your responsibility. I'm just putting it on the record for everybody to, heads up. Hopefully, this traffic study will be merged with the other ones, and we'll be able to look at, some real numbers going down.
Yeah, and how we can mitigate the traffic through that intersection.
Yeah. I know the level of service, and, you do a traffic study, but let's face it, we want it to be convenient. It benefits everybody. The people that have to get home, back and forth to work, and it benefits you just as well. People don't like to sit in traffic getting in and out of subdivisions and commercial shopping centers. So anything you can do that would be great.
If I can add that to the record, I brought up, well, actually Saturday at 2:30, I was sitting at the light trying to get into center of New England. There's no right turn going into center of New England, right turn only.
Wendy's.
So if you're going 95 south, you're stopped at that light, one car, nobody else can get by you. I was backed up to the intersection we're speaking of. So I know it's not your concern, but that needs to be looked at. If you could get a right turn only into center of New England, that would alleviate that whole backup, because of that one car wants to go 95 south. Nobody else can get by him that wants to go into center of New England. It's just a bad design. We didn't have the traffic years ago when this was done. So I think that needs to be looked at too on the traffic study. That would alleviate a lot of problems. I was backed up to the light, was not moving at 2:30 on a Saturday. Because now you got the car wash, you got the Dunkin' Donuts, you got the Cumberland Farms, you're gonna have your complex there. There's just a lot going on in that corner. Yeah, thank you.
So we do have Josh Rosen here as well, who can talk about the existing conditions and a little bit more about the site.
And through the chair, if I just want to add, the concept of flexibility came up, and I think it's worth discussing, what the applicant's going to be seeking when they come back. When they come back, the next stage will be master plan application. They'll have to provide you with a master plan that has a specific set of uses. At that point, they're going to have to make a position as to, are they seeking immediately a mix of uses, residential, commercial, or just commercial? Planning staff sees benefits of the two options. Where they're going to maintain flexibility is that the ordinance, as it's being conceived of, is meant so that they're given a certain allowance of commercial, and as they add residential units, they remove from their allowance of commercial. But when the ordinance is adopted, the ordinance maintains that flexibility can still be achieved. The applicant could come back and revisit with us and change the number of residential units and change the mix of commercial uses. That might require revisiting the master plan approval. It would not require revisiting the particular zone allowance on the site. So I want you to understand, when you look at this at the next meeting, you're looking at a specific plan and you're looking at an ordinance that will allow flexibility moving forward. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, and I think I actually heard option 3, where they could come back with commercial and where the residential may be, but not at this time. Or commercial could go at that time. So they might come back with just the commercial component.
Understood. Yeah. And when they get master plan, as you guys are familiar, they get vested in the number of residential units, the amount of square footage of commercial. Minor things like changes in tenants or slight changes in uses may not need to go back to master. But when we get master, we vest them in something. If they need to change their concept later, they can, and they come back to this board and they revest at master. But when you're looking at the zoning allows for a certain degree of flexibility all along.
Great.
Name and address?
Absolutely. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Josh Rosen. I'm a Rhode Island professional engineer, senior project manager with VHB Incorporated, office at 1 Cedar Street in Providence. Thank you for allowing us to speak tonight, and The folks that came before me certainly did as good a job as any to kind of outlay the project for us. I just want to kind of give you a little bit of a snapshot on the engineering side of things, what we did for studies so far. It wasn't a technical design stage yet. The design details obviously are to come based on the process through master plan and beyond. But I can certainly give you some insight on what was vetted at the project, some of the characteristics, some of the constraints. I'll be brief and explain some of the things that we're looking forward to having the ability to design and sort of hash out at the future stages. So 17-acre property right on the corner of Arnold and New London Turnpike. We didn't just jump right into this site plan, first and foremost. Tim decided and Star Capital decided to take the time and effort to have us really get in to a study and evaluation of the entire property to determine whether or not this type of project would be a good fit based on things like environmental constraints, topographies, available utilities, and that sort of thing. So we performed a pretty hefty site due diligence and site evaluation. Our environmental folks at VHB walked the site to determine that there were no wetland resources within the property. We surveyed that, a visual survey, and also used some mapping to determine that also we would not be subject to any off-site buffers from wetland jurisdictional areas surrounding the property that would impact the ability for us to develop this parcel. We also took the step, again, internal to VHB, our SINR, our Soil Investigation and Remediation Group, did a phase 1 environmental assessment of the entire 17-acre property, which came back clean and sort of set the tone for the fact that we have 17 acres of land here, and it can be considered that that entire acreage is developable in a way. One of the things that we looked at was the topography, as I mentioned, and utilities. We found, again, that the water utilities are available on Arnold Road, sanitary sewers available in the London Turnpike. Topography has grade change for sure, from the corner at Arnold Road and the London Turnpike down Arnold Road. The grade goes from high to low. Down the London Turnpike, along the frontage, the grade goes from high to low. The site is generally sloped also from the Arnold New London corner out to the rear of the property, where Mr. Eden mentioned there is the industrial piece of property, the industrial use, industrial zone property, as well as the future assisted living project. So we kind of set the groundwork, as I mentioned, to just understand what we're dealing with for the property, get Star Capital a comfort level that we can construct something at this site that is unconstrained by some of the typical things that we see on the engineering side of things. So with that said, you know, again, Ms. Morris mentioned that this is a very high level of concept, both concepts that were prepared. But I will say that a couple of things that reared their head, and Mr. Clinton from my office will talk in a minute about the traffic. We did pay close attention to the intersection points that you see on our concept plans. In other words, the location for our right in, right out on Arnold Road, our two-way or full access on Arnold Road, and the same on New London Turnpike. Mr. Clinton will talk to that, but those were carefully selected as a way to understand how the site could circulate, how it could lead us to, within our future studies, a plan that, you know, we feel would be supported. Granted, there may be mitigation. We'll talk to that as well, but from a traffic standpoint, but that was one focus on this project, because without the right access points, whether it be for the applicant on the leasing side of it, or whether it be for their safety and circulation, the site won't work. So those 4 locations, again, were carefully selected. Inside this site, the concept plans were kind of carefully vetted in a way to understand what the opportunities would be and how flexible we felt this site was for the future design and the future, you know, site paths that will be selected, whether that's the commercial, whether it's commercial and the residential. We tried to just show that the opportunities exist, that we can do something pretty neat here. And in doing so, again, Attorney Morris mentioned, that some of the written documentation in the ordinance was kind of sort of created from our concept plan as far as understanding, okay, with our program of 120,000 square feet of retail, we're able to, one, provide areas for stormwater, two, provide buffering to residential properties and residential zones around the project. Three, provide parking and landscape buffers along the frontage, and also have a project site or development that doesn't rely on 80, 90% impervious surface. You know, an open space element, amenity space, things that really create some placemaking for the project. So as we develop these concepts, those sort of things fell into place. Now, the stormwater designed, we know it's not yet. Topography, the way that it's grading away from the site, away from the intersection, and what is needed to construct the site, soil erosion, all that thing, soil erosion, sedimentation control, all that stuff has to be vetted. All that stuff has to be designed appropriately. It has to match, you know, with the surrounding properties where we have no impacts. We know that. And, you know, all those technical matters we plan to address for sure. And if things have to be modified to fit, for the site to fit, they will be. So that just a snapshot on what has been done so far. A little bit about the site, and then I can answer a couple of questions, or as many as you like, and then I'd like Mr. Clinton from my office to explain what could be coming for a traffic study and some of the things that we already have an eye on at this site, okay?
Questions?
Thank you.
Presentation, I just traffic and then, you know, the water flow, that's kind of the concern.
Absolutely, understood.
We appreciate the applicant from Mr. Coventry. I always say that.
Mhm.
To bring in a lot of other places. We do appreciate it. We're definitely going to work through this project.
Definitely, thank you. Okay, so Bob Clinton is one of our traffic team leads in our traffic engineering division, and I'll let him kind of talk a little bit about, like I said, some of the traffic-related items that we plan to address going forward. Okay.
Name and address, please.
Robert Clinton. I'm also with the firm VHB Engineering. We're located in Providence at 1 Cedar Street in Providence, Rhode Island. A lot of my thunder's been stolen. Yeah, we are going to be preparing a full traffic study. We're going to be looking at all the issues that you brought up this evening. There are a lot of proposed projects. We're going to include those in our traffic study. We understand some of the issues that exist today, such as, you know, the right turn movement, the 3 traffic signals. Each of them has their own challenges and issues today. The lane usage out there, a lot of times vehicles get trapped in the wrong lane, turn-only lanes, and we're going to clarify that and hopefully identify some of the issues that exist out there. The traffic study, like I said, is going to involve performing new traffic counts out there and observations. We're going to project the future volumes of not only our development, but also these other developments that are proposed. One of the big things that was mentioned is the Center of New England Boulevard, the current construction that's going on out there, and how that's going to free up some capacity along New London Turnpike. So we'll quantify that, and that is going to be a positive aspect, but the negatives are there will be an increase in traffic. A lot of the traffic for the commercial development will be pass-by trips. So a lot of that traffic's already on the roadway, but it will draw some new traffic to the site too. The residential component will be new trips to the site. Those aren't passed by. You're not passing by. Those are new trips to the site. And a lot of the new trips in the area are by residential units. So we'll be looking at all those features and trying to identify the existing deficiencies, how we can take advantage of our project to improve existing deficiencies, and then look at mitigation opportunities. Josh kind of talked about the 4 access points. The full access points we've located as far away from the traffic signal as possible. The right in, right outs are closer to the signal. the circulation, you know, we put a lot of thought into how to make this a successful project. Because if we don't improve the traffic operations on the existing roadways, you know, they're not going to be able to find tenants that are going to want to occupy those spaces. Because like you said, GPS now tells people to go different, to avoid the area, go different routes. So if we can clean things up, it'll be a success for the town and it'll also be a success for the project. Any questions or comments? And I'm glad to hear some of these points that are brought up. They were things that we identify on a preliminary basis. We have, you know, we're located in Providence, but we have employees that live throughout the state, and many of them drive through this area on a daily basis, so,
I think my comment on traffic is the traffic's fine as long as it flows.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you go down Route 2 by the mall, I mean, there's traffic, but it flows.
Yep.
You just can't get bottlenecked.
Right.
That's kind of, there is going to be traffic there.
Mhm.
There's no way around it.
Yeah, you're not going to have a successful business district if you don't have traffic because it feeds off the traffic. So, like you said, our goal is to keep it moving.
Anybody else have any questions?
Place to rink at the dump. And it seems like we're a one airline runway. We're not much better than that now. And we've got all sorts of airlines coming into international flight. When you do this traffic study and these numbers come to light, great, we got the numbers, but then what? You got 3 different towns. Pelican as best. How do you, who starts taking land from people and making wider roads? Who does that? You? You can do it.
Yeah, I was going to make that point too.
Look, I don't.
No, I was just going to suggest, yeah, if people aren't aware, New London Turnpike and Arnold Road and Crompton Road are all municipal roads. The state has no interest in that, and I would hope that the town peer engineer perhaps will look at other recommendations, because as I said, I don't think all of this falls on this development. It needs to be a comprehensive solution that goes from, you know, I forget the directions, but a little further down, at the end of this, New London Avenue, the furthest from 95 all the way to Hopkins Hill Road and inclusive of some of Hopkins Hill Road to get the traffic flowing the way it needs to flow, so you don't have people doing stupid things.
Anybody else? I'm good. Thank you.
So that does complete our presentation. I know you want to hear from the public, if any, and we're happy to get more feedback as we move on to master plan.
Right.
So,
We'll take public comment. Nobody, you don't have to address it. You can just take it into consideration like this board will.
you.
Thank you. Anybody in the public like to comment on this project?
And through the chair, I'd just like to mention, we did receive a number of written comments
Oh,
that
the
were
email,
emailed
right.
to me. Some of them were received many weeks ago, but the board has a copy of all of those written comments. They're certainly taken into consideration. If anyone who has provided a written comment, you can make an oral comment, but we do have your comments already. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Thanks. Appreciate it. I'm not hearing anybody on Zoom who'd like to raise their hand and comment on this project? Okay, I think we're good. We'll see you at the next stage. Thank you very much. Anybody, 5 minutes? We're all good? We're good? Okay, 9.2. Picosi's plat, pre-application minor subdivision, owner applicant Domenico Picosi, AP 89, Lot 9, Zone RR2, Rural Residential, Hope Furnace Road. Applicant proposes to subdivide a landlocked 8.24 acre into 4 lots, each of which would be roughly 2 acres in size, host single-family dwelling. The house lots would be accessed from the proposed private cul-de-sac from the paved driveway linked to the Washington Oak Elementary School. Is there anybody here? The applicant. Name and address, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. My name is Gene Carlino. I'm an attorney in practice law in Johnston, Rhode Island. I maintain an office at 1301 Atwood Avenue. And as the chair indicated, I'm here tonight on behalf of Domenico Boccozzi. He is the applicant. He lives in the property that abuts the land that you described. The land has an interesting history. The family has a very interesting, positive history with the town, of a successful relationship. The staff report that I'm sure you've had a chance to review eloquently describes that relationship and the goodwill but that both the town and the applicant's family have enjoyed. This is a request for a minor subdivision. The applicant understands that the town and through this commission has grave concerns about the easement that would be necessary to successfully accomplish this, and how it's going to be critical to balance public safety and maintenance concerns. I have with me tonight Tom Bean from Commonwealth Engineering. He is certainly prepared to answer questions that you may have. What we're hoping to seek is your permission to move forward with the preliminary plan stage of the application. I won't belabor the point. The evening is late. We do hope to be able to work closely with all the appropriate town departments, legal department, to craft something that ultimately receives favorable recommendations. And with that, with the chair's permission, I'd like to yield the mic to my colleague.
All right.
Thank you.
Name and address, please, Tom.
Good evening. For the record, Timothy Behan, professional engineer with the firm Commonwealth Engineers and Consultants in Providence, Rhode Island. I'd like to just run through the existing conditions plan and the proposed conditions plan just to get everybody up to speed. If we can possibly broadcast those to the monitors, or I do have some boards.
Cody, on this one, we'll go to the web resource, if you don't mind. You're going to be looking for Boccozzi plat plans on the meeting materials for Planning Commission. Yeah, look at plan set.
Yeah,
That's the right set. That's it.
that's the existing conditions plan up there right now. So we have two properties involved. The property on the left is the actual school. You can see that the property is 34.27 acres in size, so that's on the left. And the Boccozzi's property is on the right. It's the darker shaped parcel, and that's 8.24 acres in size. And if you see coming from the bottom of the screen up, you can see the actual driveway leading into the school. So the proposed, if we can go to the next plan, the proposed access to the subdivision would be off of the school driveway. So you'd pull into the school driveway, and before you hit the school, you'd go take a right into the subdivision. There's a very small cul-de-sac, if you look closely there, and there's 4 proposed house lots. So we're dealing with access through the existing school driveway. We have a short little roadway we need to construct and engineer. We have comments from the TRC meeting and the planning department engineering, which was given to us, which basically consisted of providing another hydrant for fire. So we'd have a Kent County Water Authority application. We would have, obviously, coordination with DEM for the septics, and we do soil testing. We'd have stormwater control for the proposed cul-de-sac and rooftop and driveways associated with the development. And then we look into safety issues, since we have additional, cars and maneuvers going into the site. We would contact and coordinate with a traffic engineer to get any striping, pavement markings, or signage controls for the next submission. Essentially, that's it. It's not a lot of engineering, but we need to touch base upon, many little things.
I just have a question on that funky cul-de-sac. So
Sure.
you got a cul-de-sac, and then you have 4 driveways off it.
Yeah.
Will that be a private cul-de-sac, or will that be a town-maintained cul-de-sac?
Well,
Yeah, we are envisioning this to be private, and that, on that basis, that's how we're going to proceed.
Okay. And then you'll have private garbage pickup also?
That's a great point, and I haven't candidly fully thought that through. I would imagine that that would accompany that as well. Yes.
Just those are my 2 questions. Technical Review Committee did a great job. I didn't attend because you were coming here, but I did watch it. And I think that was it. Those are the only 2 questions I had. Anybody else?
I just got a question on the road, that's town, what is that, a town road?
That's a town driveway to the school.
Is it?
So there's an easement to this parcel that was landlocked. The Posies gave the land for the Washington Oaks.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, through the chair, so that's the best question of the hour. That's not a town road. It is town property. The school is town property, and there is a driveway there. The applicant, this subdivision, when it comes back in front of you, is going to be seeking relief for all of these lots to have 0 frontage on a public right-of-way. We understand the unique arrangement in history. The reason why that particular piece of land is landlocked is because this applicant's family donated all of the land that touched the street and allowed the town to build that school. It's a unique arrangement. As you guys had seen in your packets, there were affidavits that were signed by the council president and the school at the time it was made to be supportive of the development of these parcels when they came along. I think those affidavits were kind of a good faith type of approach. Technically, this applicant still needs a variance for 0 frontage. When they come back, that's the reason why this minor subdivision elevated to being in front of you, because it requires frontage relief. The lot areas are fine. They've got as much area as each lot needs per zoning, but it's coming in front of you for 2 votes the next time they're here. There's going to be a vote on the zoning relief, frontage relief, and then there'll be a vote on the subdivision project itself. And in a way, that town property will act like a right-of-way, but it won't be a town right-of-way. It'll be a school property, and then the applicant will seek an easement on top of the school property in which the school will still use, but it'll provide them the legal rights to pass and recross over the school property to reach their lots. That easement will be part of their subdivision proposal. The easement doesn't exist yet. There's no easement, to my knowledge, at this point in time in that area. They'll provide an easement, and that will be a component of their project that will be subject to TRC review. The school will be aware of it. Town staff will be aware of it. We'll review it, but it will be a component of the subdivision.
It'll come back as unified development.
Yeah, when this comes back,
It'll be acting as zone.
correct.
Go ahead, Jim.
Just a couple thoughts on that. We don't have residential compounds in Coventry anymore. They were outlawed because of some of these same problems. People would buy a house in there and then say, how come I have to pay taxes and I don't get garbage pickup? And incidentally, the first residential compound in this town, I know the engineer very well. And in fact, I think it was a dentist named Dr. McLean who subdivided a number of lots for family members. So that being said, just noting that, and I think some of this came out of TRC, that road is owned by the school department. Therefore, you're at their mercy when it comes to snow removal, because if school's closed for a week, you don't know for sure when they're going to come plow it. The town does not plow school property. Just one observation, and that's kind of safety. And then, as you pointed out, the rubbish refuse, because we're probably, I mean, if they're not going to send town trucks down that road, I don't know if there's any way, and I don't know how tight the lots are, or whether you want to do the cul-de-sac via an easement, or what your arrangement is. It just doesn't seem to go far enough in to maintain some stacking. If, you've got kids walking on the sidewalk, and you know how it is. I don't know if you've seen the schools in this town, but when it's time to drop the kids off and pick the kids up, none of them take the bus. The parents are lined up. That school, I think, has more parking than most, and I must admit I don't frequent that school as much as I see what goes on at a few of the other ones during those peak times. So if you could just maybe give some consideration, if it's not going to be town pickup, then you're going to have your own truck going in there to get stuff. So you might want to have a designated area so that we don't end up with conflicts with buses and refuse trucks. And then the other thing to keep in mind is during the construction phase of the project, you know, you got contractors, dump trucks, and all kinds of other stuff that are going to be going in there and in conflict. And I just think that, you know, fair warning that they're in a school zone. And, you know, I would just hate to see a mishap like we just saw in Woonsocket. I'm not familiar enough with the area to know what they have out there for a sidewalk width, how wide the road is, but we want to make sure that there's as few conflicts as possible. But I don't see where 4 residential structures is going to add a whole lot of conflicts. But again, when you're dealing with school children, that should be number one consideration. So. Yeah, I could see it on the plan, but I can't, you know, it could be the minimum 3 foot with grass on both sides, or it could be 6 or 8 feet wide. And I think the more sight distance and the more area there is to differentiate between pedestrian traffic and people coming in and out of there. And by the same token, I'm sure you're not going to want parents going in and turning around there when it comes, because it's easier to, or meet me over there instead of, you know, me picking you up at the school. So whatever you guys come up with, that's fine. But I just wanted to raise the issue. I think that's the only issue that I see is the conflict with the school driveway coming in and out of there. And my first impression when I looked at the plan was there's not much of a stacking lane for even 3 cars without you guys all backed up. But at the same token, I recognize you probably don't want non-residents driving in there and turning around or parking and waiting for someone to get out of school or dropping off their students. So whatever you come up with will be fine.
If I can add to that, my daughter went to Washington Oak when it first opened. That is probably one of the better school sites in the town. And I don't think they'll be stacking up to your property, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I would definitely take that into consideration, but that is a huge area. And there is a lot of room to park there. So,
Well, those are all excellent suggestions. The refuse, the snow removal, even extending beyond the cul-de-sac and onto the road, and the depth of the cul-de-sac. And what the applicant envisions is forming a homeowners association, and to get those documents recorded in the land evidence records to hopefully alleviate the purchaser 3 times down the road, knocking on the door saying, "Why aren't you picking up my garbage?"
I think did they pass an ordinance, a state law now that we have to disclose that? I'm not sure, because it seemed like people just didn't read the deed or realize until after they bought the property. So now they have to sign something, I think, right up front that acknowledges that they understand that. But I was just giving you the history in Coventry, because I personally like the residential compound. And then at one time, there were some people that didn't want to have to deal with the complaints. And they said, let's just outlaw them. And that's what happened.
and if I could just ask too, I think the town does plow that, DPW. And also when the school is closed, I think it is plowed also because there is events at the school. The school is used for other events. So I believe that's pretty much plowed all the time.
That's my understanding. I think that this applicant is going to be able to enjoy the benefit of the fact that the town does maintain plowing service of the driveway. So while I can't guarantee that the town is out there the morning of, if we're in the middle of winter break, you know, the applicant could certainly investigate if they may need occasional vendor service, but I think that the town is going to be plowing that school driveway as it currently does, and that is pretty frequent, and the town DPW department does handle that. While this is certainly a school property, this is a town-owned property, and it's the town DPW that provides the services of plowing and what's needed for the snow clearing. And then I'll just make mention, because we're wrapping up, for the engineer, we're willing to explore options to have a cul-de-sac that would provide fire with the ability to get their apparatus around, but may not need to be the full standard paved width We might be able to work with some sort of modified agreement there. It's not the cul-de-sac that's giving you frontage, and it's a small scale site. I think we're willing to look at something that might be able to reduce the size of that while still giving fire what they need. Before you get into the design, and especially your stormwater design, let's have some conversations and let's firm up what a design could be there. Yep.
Yeah, and before you leave, I'm just going to ask if there's any public comment, you can take it into consideration. Does anybody in the room have any public comment on this application? I don't see any. Anybody on Zoom, raise your hand. Cody, anybody? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Next is the director's report.
Nothing to report.
All right, so entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Certainly nobody opposed.